Hi, everyone, and welcome to The Secret Life of. I'm Liz.
And I'm Lindsay, and this is your weekly listen about friendship, creativity, entrepreneurship, and the simple joys in life.
Lindsay, let me introduce you to Michelle.
Hi, Michelle.
This is Lindsay. Oh my God. I love this. This is so fun. I love when we have guests. This is the best.
I know. You're our first guest of the season, Michelle.
Ooh,
yes.
That's
I
fun,
know.
fun and fancy.
Thank you for being here. This is so awesome. We're always like, when we started out the podcast, we were like, are we going to have guests or are we just going to like talk to ourselves? And I'm glad we figured out a good rhythm. And so each guest is like super intentional and somebody that we definitely want to talk to, obviously, and that we feel people will resonate with. And you are that person, Michelle.
Thank you. I'm very, very excited.
Yes, like especially other entrepreneurs, because what a world. What a world entrepreneurship is. And I feel like you can speak so much to not just running one business, but like many businesses all at the same time. And you've pivoted a lot in like different avenues over the years. And so just like excited to talk about all that. Yay. Linz, why don't you, Linz, take it away.
Yeah, so Michelle, like you and I think I only met you once, and it was when you had your other studio, Larimar, right?
Larimar, yes. Yeah.
Larimar, yeah. And you were hosting kind of an industry event. I think Kristen Marie Parker was there, Karina Skrobecki, kind of like a panel.
Yeah.
And that was really cool. But I don't actually remember if we officially met there.
I know. I know that we have so many overlapping circles, but if we met that night, I apologize. But I know we've been in the same room, but I don't know if we've officially like chatted face to face.
Met each other.
Yeah.
Yeah. So coming from somebody then who like, I don't know you that well, tell us a little bit about yourself. Yeah. Where you're at on your journey right now.
Oh my gosh. I was looking over all the questions you guys sent me in advance, and I feel like it is so hard to summarize what I am doing right now because I'm doing so many different things. And I guess the best way that I could describe myself is a multi-hyphenate entrepreneur, but I'm running a curated vintage shop that I have online currently, and I do pop-ups and events with that. I am also a photographer, which I'm getting back into that. And then once I get past those two things and I'm meeting somebody new and I tell them I also work at 2 different restaurants, it kind of blows their mind because I'm also in the service industry right now currently. So I'm doing many things everywhere, all over the city, all at once.
Wow. I didn't know that you're working in restaurants too. That's so fun. The first 2 years that I lived in Seattle, I was working in restaurants too, just because I was like, I got to get out of my loft that I sit in by myself all day long. Like I need to go see human beings.
Yes.
And it was just like a great way to meet new people. And just like, it's so fun working in restaurants, isn't it? I really enjoyed it. Yeah. I love restaurant culture. I love, people who work in restaurants are like a special type of person. And so it's just fun that's so great. Michelle, but what restaurants are you working at?
I'm working at Brimmer and Heel Tap. And then I also, did you not know
I live around the corner.
Okay. I'll be there. I'll literally be there Friday and Saturday.
Oh my gosh. We go to that little wine shop across the street all the time. And I work out of Red Arrow sometimes. I'm like an 8-minute walk from Brimmer and Hilltop. This is so fun to know. Okay, sorry. What was the other one?
How to Cook a Wolf on Queen Anne.
Just like 2 of the best restaurants in Seattle.
Casual.
Lucky you.
Yeah. So Lindsay, to give you more background, I mean, you know me as the photographer, me probably, and I have had a 20 plus year long photography career here in Seattle. And I think now I feel like I'm having this like rebellious teenage like view on who I am as an entrepreneur or a business owner or how I identify in my career, because for almost the entirety of my adult life, I was a photographer, and that was almost preceded me in any situation that I walked into. Instead of being me, I was always introduced as oh, this is Michelle. She's an amazing photographer, like blah, blah, blah. And it almost was like my photography career outshone who I was as a person. Like I wanted to be something besides just a photographer. And that was something that towards like not the end of my career, but as I reached the point where I wanted to start pivoting, I just started to like cringe anytime somebody introduced me, because I was like, I want to be identified more than just a photographer. Like there are other things that I'm interested in. I'm not just that. And I opened Larimar Studios in 2018. I was coming off of 10 years of a very successful high school senior portrait career, industry that I built from the ground up. I was teaching workshops, mentoring photographers. I sold this ebook that was a posing guide to other photographers to teach. And I got so burnt out from my industry, like niche specific, that I wanted to do something else. I was like, I want to focus on my love of fashion and commercial photography, and I need to take a break from this. So I opened Larimar as what I thought at the time would be like my mark on the city. Like this is me defining myself as a leader, and I want to do X, Y, and Z with my career. And I did Larimar for a year. And thank you for reminding me of that event I did, because the three of us, Kristen and Karina, and we actually had our attorney come and speak about just like the legal side of photography and contracts and X, Y, and Z. I remember sitting in the back of that event and just being like, holy shit, this is so crazy. Like all of these people are here for us. This is so cool. And I've like built this space, but I still don't really feel like it struck me like at like the impact of that. And after having the studio for a year, I just realized like, and Liz, this will tie into the question that you asked me about, like, how do you know when it's time to move on from something? I started to feel this like immense weight from having the studio space. It became more of a burden and a chore, and the overhead of running it and the need to rent it out to like make it pay for itself or even to cover costs. Just, I felt like I was tied down by this anchor in a bad way. And instead of it like grounding and securing me, it actually was taking away from everything else that I wanted to do. And so at the end of my lease, the timing on this is crazy. My lease was up in March of 2019, and I was doing styling for a fashion shoot. And I was out like thrifting, and I came across this vintage 70s Levi's corduroy Sherpa line jacket. And I was like, oh my God, this is like real vintage. This is super cool. And there was like this moment where that was like the spark that started Black Sands. And I basically like just decided I was going to start curating and selling vintage. I wanted to play around with it. It like opened up this whole creative side of me that I didn't have from like the studio and pivoting in my career and just being like burnt out from commercial photography, so it led me to Black Sands. And then I was doing that like as a side project. And I was always like, oh, I'm so afraid to lean into this. And I know where I'm going with this, because I was like, no, I'm Michelle, the photographer. Like I can't like do anything, like nothing else would be as like successful as my like identity I've built as a photographer. So it was just something like I always put on the side, and I was like scared to basically ever shift away from like identifying as a photographer. So it was just kind of like something that I did for fun. And then when the pandemic happened, I couldn't do photography. I lost a lot of my commercial clients, and it sort of like threw me into Black Sands. And I was like, still like, this is still fun, but no, I'm actually still like a photographer. Like I need people to know that like, no, I'm a photographer. And it's taken me, I've had this business for 5.5, almost 6 years now. It's taken me a really long time to strip away that like photographer identity. And I no longer like feel tied to it, or that it's like, I'm me and I do all these things. I'm not defined by just photography.
I mean, it seems like you've kind of come to the end of that journey of like what it feels like to strip the title of photographer off. And I'm curious, because I'm sure that some people still view you as photographer. And you mentioned feeling a bit uncomfortable when you were introduced that way. what happens now for you?
I think like a lot of people that might have known me in that time I don't know. They always like ask me if I'm still doing photography. So I don't feel like it's necessarily the thing that they lead with anymore. And I don't think it bothers me the same way. I think I have spent a lot of time in my 30s, like really discovering who I am and what I'm comfortable in, and just being comfortable with myself, that I no longer feel, I would rather not be like I tied to one identity anymore. Like I feel like I contain multitudes.
Multifaceted woman. I love that.
You know, I really just love learning and being creative. And I get to do that in so many different ways now, which is like really exciting and also scary because I feel like I'm starting over again in photography now that I'm getting back into it. And you know, but I'm like, oh, I already did this once before. I already know like the steps that I need or should take. You know, it's like if you were an adult and you go back to college, you're like, I can do it right this time.
Yeah. It's interesting how when you're any type of artist, it's really hard not to wrap your identity around that.
Yes.
I'm having a hard time with that myself right now. So what you're saying is like really speaking to me because when I think about like, not that I want to do that in this moment, but when I think about pivoting, let's say one day I want to like do something different and not do photography maybe, or maybe not in the same capacity, maybe do something else, parallel conjunction with it. I have an identity crisis about it because I'm like, well, if I personally really love being identified as a photographer, and the idea that I would no longer be identified as that is very disheartening to me and breaks me up inside a little bit. So it's encouraging to know that like, even if you let that go, it doesn't mean you're not that thing anymore.
Exactly.
It just, right? Like you'll always be, it's not like one day you're just suddenly not a photographer. Like you will always be a photographer, even if you're not consistently shooting at that time in your life, or maybe you haven't shot in a year, whatever. It doesn't mean you're not that thing, but I'm working on it.
Yeah.
I'm working on that myself right now. So
I think it's so important to like separate like as artists, we get so into what we're doing and wrapped up in that identity that I think we do forget that we are a person first before our career or our identity. Like I think this could apply to anything, whether you're like a mom or you're in a career in tech or you're some whatever. It's so important to learn how to like separate those, because I think for me, I had such a hard time. I was so like, I'm a photographer and that is my identity, that if, you know, a client was unhappy, it just fucking devastated me. And it's like, I am not that thing. That is what I do, but it is not me. And so I think that is the biggest lesson for me, was to learn, like, I can be other things too. And my like well-being and health and mental health, like, is not dependent on if I do X, Y, and Z perfectly or make everybody happy. You can be the photographer, but you don't have to you also can be like a person.
Yes. It's some compartmentalization that requires some self-work.
Yeah. And I feel like we spend the majority, I mean, at least for me, like you're known as like high school student and then college student. And then like she's trying to do a certain thing. And so when you're trying to do that thing, which for me, and I think all of us, it was photography, like that's all you talk about because you want to be known as that. And then like, yeah, how do you change that for yourself and also other people? Because as a multifaceted creator, like we have to make money somehow, right?
But that's the thing, Linz. This is why it's hard, because if maybe, I don't know, tell me if you feel differently, but like the idea of making art or doing photography, for example, and not actually doing it professionally, also AKA someone is paying you to do it. And this is not true. This is some bullshit we have believed. Somehow all of a sudden you're not that thing. Like you are not an actual photographer. Someone isn't paying you. That means that you are no longer like this real artist or real photographer. And I think that maybe that, am I having an epiphany? Like if you step away from doing that particular art form as a profession, it's like, that's where the identity crisis comes in. Cause it's like, well, if someone's not paying me to do it, I don't feel legit anymore. I'm not that like actual thing anymore. And that's not really true because there are so many people who are like these amazing painters or ceramic artists who are doing it for their own joy in their like basements or in their garages. And they're not selling this work. They're just doing it for them. But that doesn't make them any less of an artist.
Yeah.
Something that I've been thinking about as like a mantra is if I wake up today and I have all the money in the world, I don't need to make money. Would I still be doing what I'm doing right now? Would I be doing the things that I like moving through this day in this way if I didn't need to make money? And that's how I try to approach, like, would I still do this if I wasn't getting paid for it or I didn't need to like pay rent or, X, Y, and Z. And I do believe like I truly enjoy everything that I'm doing. I enjoy photography. I enjoy curating vintage. I enjoy bringing people together. I really enjoy working at the restaurant, and we can get into this later, but it's like all of them weirdly kind of connect and tie into each other. So, as long as I wake up every day and I'm enjoying some piece of it, then yeah.
Oh, so inspiring, Michelle. You make me excited to like... I'm going to be a professional knitter tomorrow or something. Like you just make me very inspired and excited to like do new things. Cause I think, God, anyone who's listening, who's an entrepreneur and like you work so hard in this like tunnel vision fucking world and especially solopreneur life where you are just right. Like you're just in it all day, every day. It is not something you check out of. It feels like such a lifetime ago that I had like a quote job and where I would like 6 o'clock, I'm out. And then I would just go live my life. And so like when
what is that?
What is that? Like, I don't even remember really that feeling because it's a lifestyle. Like a solopreneur life is a lifestyle and you are just like constantly, I'll be in the car driving to dinner with my husband and I'll be like, you know what do you think about this idea? Like I'm literally just always thinking about it. It's like your baby. You are just so enveloped in this thing. And so it's sometimes like it's so tunnel vision. Like I don't even think about doing something different.
Yeah.
Even though I think that would be really fun to do. Like,
I think it would be fun to cosplay as a corporate person for like 2 weeks and then I would get bored. I think about
for
that.
2 weeks.
Like,
goodbye.
I think we all go through that. Like, at least at some point, you're like, fuck this. I'm going to go get a quote unquote real job and live like everybody else. And then I like really think about that. And I'm like, there is no way that I can be at the same place at the same time every morning and have to stay there until a certain time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I have respect for people that need that and that's how they like thrive because I would never make it. I would be like, I'm sorry, what? You want me to be there like the whole time? Like
the whole time.
The whole time. We're here all day, people.
Which is ironic because I do have a job where I work for somebody else and I do have to go there, but it again doesn't feel like I'm on my feet. I'm meeting people. I'm greeting them. I'm like seating them at their table and bringing them food. It's like I get to play restaurant girl. And I love that part of me that I've discovered and fun.
I love this, Michelle. So on the topic of like running a business, the thing with you that I've always been like, Lindsay, I don't know if I told you this, but Michelle she offered mentorship sessions like back in 2018. That. Okay. Because after that workshop that Karina and Kristen did, I was like, I love Michelle. We must be friends. I decided that we were going to be friends. I wooed you, Michelle, in case you didn't know. Anywho, I tricked you.
Everybody, hold on. That was a callback to our most recent episode, How to Make Friends as an Adult. There is quite a large section about Liz talking
How Liz is a
about
creep.
how no, you're not a
Yes.
creep. You're just intense with your love, and it's appreciated. But
I
yeah,
love aggressively. Yes. Okay.
Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah. And Michelle, this is a perfect example. I was like, Michelle will be mine.
Yeah.
And so I was like, you know, what would be a great idea? I'm going to like sign up for a mentorship session. And so I did. And it was like, it really was amazing, Michelle. And it changed a big part of like my direction and how I was, because I wanted to get out of weddings. And the following year, I was my last year of shooting weddings, and it was all based on like what we talked about in our session. And shortly after that, you closed Larimar.
I did, yeah.
Anyways, yeah, something that I've always admired about you is the juggling of multiple things, because I'm someone who gets like overwhelmed very easily. And that is hard to manage when you're also running a business, because like a solopreneur business, it's like, yeah, you might be able to have an assistant. Maybe you do have a team, but then is it a solopreneur business anymore? Like when it's just a team of one and you are running this thing, like you're doing so many things all the fucking time in one business. And so then I'm like, how the hell does Michelle do this? Like she has this vintage shop and she's getting back into photography. And, you know, like, I just feel like you're always doing new things and stuff. And it's like, and you always are like successful at them.
Well,
Michelle's like, you know what I think I'm going to do? I'm just going to open a vintage store. And then like, it's like the most gorgeous curated thrift store meets like newness, and it's beautiful. I'm like, what? And then you opened up another little studio and like all these things. And I'm like, how do you manage this? Like, how do you juggle all of this? Because each business needs a lot of attention.
mm-hmm.
Like, what is the secret? What is it how do you do this? Tell us. I can barely raise a child and run a business. So like, I really just don't understand.
I mean, I guess like that depends on your definition of success, but I guess if success is measured on my happiness and what I feel like I'm contributing to the world, then yes. If it's rolling in money, no. I feel
Touché.
like I feel like in the last couple of years, post pandemic, post divorce, post like a lot of different things, I have I'm telling my therapist, I'm like, can I just take a break from working on myself? Because like the growth and the knowledge and the self-awareness and the learning is like a lot.
Being an evolved human is a full-time job. Why does it take so much energy?
There are still many mistakes I have made and things that I am learning about like the numbers and like financial side of business that I, to be totally honest, am still learning. But I feel like my skill is just in following my intuition and just doing things with not reckless abandon, but just seeing something I want to do, feeling inspired by it and just trying it. And I love that about myself, but I feel like I'm still constantly learning. And at 40 years old, I feel like I know less now that I did at 25 but also I know more in so many other regards as well. I write a lot of lists every day. And I'm obsessed with my Google Calendar. So those are like the OCD ways that I keep track of things. But to your point, it is a lot. And another thing I didn't mention was I opened a physical space a year and a half ago to sell my vintage called Halite, which was my goals and dreams were never to have like a full-time brick and mortar, but I was doing events and pop-ups in my tiny little office because I had a office for 10 years that I had for my photography business where I would meet clients for hair and makeup, or I would go and edit, and like it was my workspace. And then in 2019, when I started carrying vintage, Black Sand sort of took over that space, and I was doing open houses in this 200 square foot like tiny square office. And I'm like, ooh, this is really awesome. This is way better than doing a pop-up. People are coming to me. I don't have to schlep my stuff everywhere. It's like super successful, but I want more than this. Like I want to have a bigger space where I can have other people come and pop up with me or host events. And so that was where the idea of Halite came from, which was my studio that I had in Lower Queen Anne for the last year and a half. And I was like, I don't want it to be like a 7-day a week store, but I want somewhere where I can be open as I choose. I can have other businesses also be a part of it. So it's kind of like a collaborative retail space. And over the last, 6 months, I just started to realize like it needed more of my time than I was really able to give to it if I really wanted to do more. And as my schedule shifted and my calling to go back to photography and then working more in restaurants, something kind of had to give. And to me, again, my passion was to not be tied to a space in that way. And that's very similar to the feelings I had at the first iteration of Larimar, where it just became more of a burden and it wasn't doing the things that I needed to allow me to grow. And so I made the decision, which again, it was like a 4-month long process of deciding, do I get rid of this space? What are the pros and cons? This has greatly benefited me in X, Y, and Z, but is it worth the ways that it's not benefiting me anymore? And I chose to move out of the space. And again, it's not me shutting down Black Sands or my vintage or anything. It just was the closing of a space so that I could continue to focus my energies where I feel called to spend my time and the projects and things that I want to work on, and just pausing it and putting a pin in it and knowing that that was like the thing that was one too many things that I was doing.
Did you feel like a loss when you made that decision? Like, did you feel like you had to mourn that? Because I'm someone who gets very attached to things in my business. Like letting go of something I'm doing in my business is really hard for me. Even if I know it's the right thing, I will literally like mourn it.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if you felt that, even though the store itself is alive because it's like an online shop, but like closing the physical space, was that hard?
It was way less harder than I anticipated it to be. And I don't know if it's because I have now gone through multi iterations of things that I have had to let go of. Like when I got rid of Larimar, that was the first time I had opened something. And I was just so sad about that. And I was like, I don't want anyone else to move into that space because it's mine. And I loved it. And it was really, really hard for me at that point to let go of it. And I feel very lucky that I really try to listen to my intuition and trust myself. And this is like the advice I give to people when they're making a big decision. This was something that I thought about a lot for like 4 months, but I was not in a good headspace 4 months ago. And I knew I did not want to just make that decision rashly because everything in my like personal life was crumbling to the ground. I was like, I need to sit, wait it out, think about it. And I kept being like, what if I just close Halite? What will that feel like? And I tried to like just picture myself on the other side of it. And I wasn't quite sure. But then one day I had a conversation with my best friend and I just out loud finally just said, okay, I'm going to shut Halite down. And I went to bed. And I was like, if I wake up tomorrow and I feel calm and at peace, then I know that is the decision that I will make. But if I wake up in the morning and I'm like, oh my God, I don't want to do that, or I'm resisting it somewhere like in my body, then I'll just keep thinking about it. And I woke up the next morning, I was like, yep, that's the move. I'm good. I'm over it. I mean, it was hard. It was physically hard. I moved out of that space all by myself. And it was like very,
Michelle, call us. What is happening? You should have called for reinforcements.
I like to torture
when I
myself.
shut down my studio, I was like, it's so much. Oh my God, you're wild.
I am so thankful that when I shut down Northlight, that I just literally passed everything on to like the new people. That Northlight is now Humano Studios. And I literally like didn't have to move out anything. I was like, just negotiated with the landlords. Like,
It's fantastic.
another
'Cause,
photographer's
yeah.
coming in. I don't have to move out this giant camera stand. I don't have to move out any of the seamless. Like,
Yeah.
I was like, hey,
It's
peace,
so
bye.
much work.
I think
Yes.
that was like the catharsis that I needed of like the physically like ripping it apart myself kind of vibes.
Mhm.
You know, the final day like that I had to be out of there and give my keys back, I was just like, yep, on to the next. Like I just
Wow.
I thought
That's so
I
awesome.
thought I was gonna be like
In tears,
yeah.
I mean, I had a studio for 6 months and I cried a damn river about it. Like when I made the decision, this is just not the space. Like my dream of having a studio was like made. Like I was like, I did it. And so quickly realized this was not the actual space. You know, side note, when I opened Luna Studios, I had that really deep inside gut feeling it wasn't the right space. But I chose to push through it because I was like, okay, but it's water fucking front. And the light in there was insane. And I was like, I'm going to make this work. I really feel like it's going to be okay. There's other first floor storefront studios in Pioneer Square that are doing well. I can do this. And like, it just was not the space. And I cried a lot.
I mean, that's
So,
fair. And it's a good lesson to
yeah.
learn that like your intuition
Yes.
truly like is something to pay attention to. And I think
Mm-hmm.
the place that I've gotten to now with things where I'm like, I tried this and maybe it wasn't the right iteration. And I'm so sad because everything here was like X, Y, and Z perfect that I loved. And I'm going to miss the back of the studio and how amazing the light was for my product
Mm-hmm.
photography. But I'm trying to like tell myself, well, the next space is going to be 1,000 times better. Or whatever I end up next is actually going to be even better than this one. And try to just look at it as a step forward, even if it feels like it, or it's just a step sideways. It's not like you're going backwards by any means.
What a positive, wonderful way to look at this. I love that. So this is a weird example, but our friend Angeline, every year she gets a Christmas tree and names it like Earl or something.
Oh my,
Ned.
cute.
She names her. And the idea is that it's always the same Ned.
Okay.
In a different tree form.
Okay.
So Ned always comes back. Did you know this, Lindsay?
No, I actually didn't. I'm going to text her about this.
You need to talk to her
like,
about this.
She must believe in reincarnation then.
Right. What is this life? I don't know, but I think it's Ned that they name the tree every year. And so I'm going to look at that as Luna Studio because one day she will be resurrected.
Exactly. Exactly.
Different space. Yeah, no, that's such a beautiful way to look at it, Michelle. And honestly, like something I talk to Zach a lot about because he sees the trials and tribulations of running a business, and it's an emotional experience no matter who you are or what your temperament is or how soft and gushy you are inside. Like it is an emotional thing to start a business from the ground up and then like, you know, go through all the obstacles that you have to face. But he's always like, how do you keep going? This is so fucking wild. And I'm like, because I really love it. Like,
yeah.
I really think like at the core of being an entrepreneur, it's like this really deep rooted, fiery passion.
Yes.
And sometimes you need a break from that passion but it never really leaves you. I mean, like Michelle, you're like coming back to it.
Yeah.
There's no other option.
Yeah. No. Yeah. Like something that I absolutely love the fact that I started working in a restaurant because there are so many valuable life lessons to take away from working in a restaurant and something that I very recently have like accepted and come to understand is as an entrepreneur, and I'm sure you both understand this, I put an insane amount of pressure on myself to do things perfectly or like make everybody happy 100% of the time. And every day I walk into service at whatever restaurant I'm at, and I have this self-imposed, like nobody is telling me to do this. I have this self-imposed, like, okay, I talked to this person yesterday and I feel like I kind of said something weird and I want to make sure like I don't ever do that way again. And every day I walk into service and I'm like, today I'm going to nail it. I'm going to be perfect. I'm going to make everybody happy. I'm not going to be weird. I'm going to smile at everybody. And you're whatever like goes through your head where you're just like, I'm going to
Yes.
have a perfect service. And every day without fail, something goes wrong. Like, or just there's like
Mm-hmm.
something where you're like, I could have just done that a little differently. And I'm so hard on myself from like, okay, don't do that again. And again, no one's telling me this. This is just me. But I realized the philosophy or the life lesson is that there is no perfect service. There never will be. And it's just to just accept that you're either going to make a mistake or you're not going to please everybody or, you can always improve. And it is like such a hard thing for me to get my head around as a perfectionist and as a business owner. And it's like so
Mm-hmm.
humbling. And it's something that I absolutely love about my job in the restaurant is like learning flexibility, learning to be humble, learning not to take things personally. And it has like dramatically helped me as a business owner just really try to take a step back and be like, it's okay. Like we're all human beings. We're all going to fuck up. This is just part of life.
Oh my God. I feel renewed. I feel like Michelle is infusing. She's like that tequila cocktail that makes you feel happy afterwards. She's like an upper.
I
Is it
mean,
just me?
I think everybody should work in the service industry. And as a 40-year-old woman who has never worked a service job, like
Yes.
it's very humbling, very
Isn't it the
fun. I
best?
love it.
It's so fun. I think about going back all the time.
I
But
loved like just the fast paced nature of it. Like, I don't know. We've talked a little bit about like how I love video games, but a lot of like the games that I play are very like real life based. And I loved playing games like Diner Dash or
Oh my God,
whatever,
that game is so
where
stressful.
she's like going and like serving tables. And there's like this game that Ian and I play called Overcooked on the Switch. And we're like two little characters trying to make like and fill all these orders. Anyway, I like viewed the service industry like that and just juggling and it's so fun. It's so fun.
wow. And there's like service high, like when the rush was like super crazy and everything went smoothly and you just had like a great time. And then afterward, everyone feels like they're high and
Yeah.
they're just like, whoa, that was great.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what a weird, wonderful world.
Yeah.
I know. That's so well. Okay. I have a question about loneliness
Okay.
because I'm going to be really vulnerable and just
Spell
say
it.
it. Okay, Lindsay, you know a lot about this already from Cry Fest on Boxer, but I know a huge reason is because I am a new mom and like still, I mean, my son is 16 months old, which is still very new. I don't know when you're allowed to say you're not a new mom anymore, but whatever. I still feel like it's very new.
After they're 4.
And okay, perfect. I have some time. But it's like I'm still in the stage where like everything just, it's like happening so fast. Every stage is happening so fast. And then everything feels new all the time. And because I'm so like, you have to be so devoted in these early years, I feel very lonely in life right now, which is weird because I have this like really amazing, supportive husband and I have a really great community of friends here in Seattle, but I'm spending a lot of time alone lately because we only have part-time childcare. So I'm either with my little baby babbling with him all day long, not having adult conversations unless I'm crying to Lindsay on the phone, or I'm like at my desk working. So it's like a lot. I'm running errands alone with Oliver, or I'm like I'm at my desk working and whatever. And like, yes, I can always call friends and stuff, but it's like just a very different phase of life right now. And running a solopreneur business can be really lonely because you're just like solo all the time. And so I'm always so curious to talk to other solopreneurs on like, is there a way to do you feel that way? And if you do, like, how do you combat that? Because I think working in restaurants definitely helps with that. It's like your break from being solo, and you get to go be around other people and stuff. But yeah, it's kind of a lonely thing. And you're sitting there thinking of new ideas for your business on your own, and like you're launching stuff on your own. And, like, I don't know. Am I making sense?
Yes.
It's a lonely thing. And so I always tell myself this is a season and I know it's temporary, but solopreneur life is hard.
Yeah. You are not alone in your feelings.
Thank you.
Not to be like,
yeah.
I don't know if that is a symptom of our world currently, because Liz, I have no shame in being vulnerable all the time. I am lonely as fuck constantly. Like, I am currently single. I have gone through a lot of like personal turmoil in the last year. I have been making a lot of changes in my businesses. I have been trying a lot of new things, picking up new jobs, pivoting, starting businesses, shutting down businesses. Like, I feel lonely every day. I mean, I have done so much crying this year, like so much, but I think we're all lonely in our own way, and that is normal. But I also I have an amazing like support system, and I know that I have people that love me, but it's like, I don't know if when you're a mom or you're an entrepreneur, but you have this like, I have to be so strong all the time sort of mentality, or you're like, I am successful or I am X, Y, and Z, like to the outside world. But I think that loneliness is a normal thing to feel. And I think to normalize that we have emotions, or that we feel like we're having a hard time, even if we're like bopping around the world or like look successful or we're busy, it's still totally normal to feel that way. You can feel lonely in a relationship. I think you could feel lonely working in an office with 20 other people. I don't think that that's like specific. I don't think that there's any way somebody could change their life to feel less lonely, other than to sit with that and know that that is okay to feel. And we all feel that way. I think the lesson is to not let the loneliness consume you, or to find ways that you can feel those emotions and process them, and then also do things that you know are the antithesis to that, whether it's going to the gym or hanging out with a friend or calling a friend or watching TV, or, for me, for my work life, I do a lot of editing at home by myself, but I also will just like to go sit at a coffee shop and work on my computer. And that way I feel like I'm around
You're
people.
with the people.
Yeah. But I mean, like, I
do the same.
I go and do a photo shoot and I come home and then I'm like, I have to decompress. I go to work in the restaurant for 8 hours and then I have to come home and decompress, even though I'm obviously an extroverted person, and I like fill up by like being around other people, but I still like, I have to decompress and be with myself for a lot of time as well. And then if I'm not working and I just want to, combat that loneliness, for my own personal not work life, I love to write, and I will literally go sit at a bar by myself with my journal. And it used to be with a glass of wine. I'm currently like not drinking, so I'll just have a glass of NA Amaro, and just sit and write and like order snacks and either chat with the bartender or just the person next to me or nobody at all. And that is something I really love to do for myself.
That sounds delightful.
Yeah.
I feel there are times when first of all, I think working at coffee shops, really, I think that's the reason everyone does that. It's like, you just want to be amongst the people. Like, writing at home is nice, or editing at home, it's nice, but like, it really, really changes things when you're just amongst other humans. But I think you're so right in the fact that so many people it's so unfortunately normal to just feel lonely a lot. And I think, speaking of mourning things, I think maybe am I having another epiphany? Is this is my therapy
Yeah.
session today?
I think so. Yeah.
I feel like I've been thinking a lot about, but what is happening? Like, why am I feeling this way so much lately? And I think it's because I didn't realize this until this moment, but I think I'm mourning my previous life a lot. Where being able to just like leave the house whenever I want in a matter of minutes rather than hours. It takes hours to leave the house with your child. Why? It's insane. But like, I can't just, oh, what are you doing right now? Okay, cool. And then like leaving, like I could just open the door and then I could go. I can't do that anymore. I'm like, how much? Okay, we need food. I need diapers. I need this. Like you have to pack so much stuff just to leave. And so then you're like, forget it. I'm just don't have time for this. And so then you just don't go. But like, yeah, I think just being able to leave quickly, seeing friends spontaneously anytime I wanted to, I think knowing that combats the loneliness too. Just like the knowledge that you're like, I know I can go hang with someone whenever I want, as opposed to like right now that's not the time of life I'm in. And having work sessions with friends all the time and just like the old life where it was just much more I'm around people. So solopreneur life looks different now too because of that. So I like all these ideas. I am going to adopt them.
I love it.
Okay, I have a question around loneliness too, though. Like you mentioned, like not letting the loneliness consume you. How do you know when you've become too lonely? Like what are your signals?
I mean, I feel like I've had some really like dark moments, and I've sat in a pretty bad headspace for like multiple hours in a row thinking like there's no way I can pull myself out of this. And Googling stuff on Reddit sometimes is helpful and sometimes it's not.
Oh my God, I love Reddit. But yeah.
Lindsay loves Reddit.
I love Reddit.
I'm like typing in a very specific scenario and I'm like, and then it will pop up. There's like a whole thread about it. You're like, wow, okay.
Wow.
I think from a lot of therapy and a lot of reading and like podcasts is to remember you are not your thoughts and feelings are always like going to pass through you. Sometimes I just need to feed myself.
Isn't that the truth? Sometimes
and you're
we
like,
just need a fucking snack.
Why did I feel so dysregulated an hour ago? It's because I hadn't fucking eaten in 8 hours. Like, no wonder. That tracks.
Genius.
I'm very fortunate. Like my best friend, is like a lifeline to me. I can text her if I'm just like in absolute spiraling out of control despair. But again, I think just trying to understand that I'm not alone, even if I do feel lonely at that moment, or what is making me feel lonely is trying to think about something else besides that abstract feeling where it's like, Liz, maybe it's like, oh, I feel this way because the concrete answer is it takes me an hour to leave my house. And separating that, you should put a disclaimer. I'm not a licensed therapist.
We're aware, Michelle.
This is just like
you're here for the inspiration.
This is my life experience. But yeah, I think also too, just knowing that for every emotion you feel, you're going to have like that opposite and equal feeling as well at some point. It all fluctuates. Or if I'm feeling like sometimes I really just want to be alone and cry it out, really ugly, cry it out. And then like just holding space for that feeling. But it's hard. I mean, I look back at where I was like 3 months ago and I don't feel like 100% different than I did 3 months ago, where I'm like, oh, I'm still really like sad about my breakup. I'm still like going through a lot of things like in life right now that feels in flux, but I am definitely like leaps and bounds beyond that like place I was in. So there is always like progress, even if we can't see it until we look back. And my friend, she always tells me, she's like, you're not going to be in this place forever. Like even though to me, it feels like I have been this way for so long that it's like, feels like 10 years, but it's only been, 6 months or whatever short amount of time. So like, but it is hard. And I think it's cliche to say like we all feel lonely, but I really truly like we all feel this way. And I think that's why I'm so passionate about all of the things I do, whether it's photography or curated vintage or working in the restaurant, because it is connecting with people. It is making people feel good about themselves. It is helping them see their beauty. It is helping them find clothes they feel really comfortable in and expressing themselves. And all three of those things have that thread going through it where it's, I'm serving you, I'm bringing people together through community, I'm connecting to people, I'm talking to people. Like we are all like, life is hard all the time for everybody. Like there is always going to be like something that we are dealing with.
Yeah. So
Deep breaths.
one of my questions then that I think kind of ties into what you're saying, like you mentioned wanting to make people feel beautiful. And maybe I'm like leading the witness a little bit here, but one of my questions was you've experimented a lot in business. So what to you is the thread that ties all of these passions together?
That I think, which is my decade long career at being a senior portrait photographer, was always born out of this. As a 17-year-old, felt so awkward and uncomfortable. And I want that specific demographic, I really feel like I relate to, and I want them to like see how beautiful their whole self is and the way that I see them and how I think the world sees them. And I also feel that comes in through Black Sands with a vintage, because I don't talk enough about this, but this is something that is like the basis of that brand for me, or that identity as Black Sands. Is it was born out of a radical, I was struggling so hard with my own self and my own body image and getting dressed and finding my identity. And I feel like through curating clothing and vintage, and I was able to heal this like terrible inner voice that I had of myself and the way that I saw myself. And I was so mean to myself, and clothes are a way of expressing who I am. And it has like, I want everybody to have that experience through me. And it's not even just about like selling clothes. It's like a whole lifestyle. And I like want to share my story with people. I want people to find a way that they feel good in their bodies or with themselves by the stories that I share, by the clothes that I style, by the way that I express myself. And so it's like adjacent to photography, but it's coming out in a different like material of being creative.
Mm-hmm.
And with restaurants, people are coming in to dine out. They're coming in to celebrate their birthday or an anniversary, or they're taking their family out for dinner, or they just want to be like in a really good place. And it's like making that experience for them really special. And I guess, I'm having an epiphany now, Liz.
Yes.
I want people to feel seen. And I'm going to cry. Like,
oh, I love this. Cry, Michelle.
That's something that like, wow.
Yeah, I love
it. A lot of times I don't feel seen. So it's like, I want people to feel seen because it's really important to me. And I think that I heal myself through the things that I do. Wow.
Yeah, that is so great, Michelle. Also, like, I feel like everyone wants to feel seen, right? And that's something that's so hard to feel because we, from when we're young, learn coping mechanisms on how to protect ourselves, which ends up being counterproductive because then it keeps us at arm's distance. We were just talking about this, Lindsay, on one of the last episodes where like we learned how to mask, we learned how to do all these things in order to like protect ourselves from getting hurt or whatever the reason is. And then we end up feeling lonely, or we end up just feeling so unseen because no one's really seeing the true part of us. like all the really deep down bits that make us us. So thank you for sharing that.
That was cool.
Yeah. I know. I love this.
I was talking in therapy today. I had therapy right before this, and Liz and I have been talking about what it's like to become a mom and like have to form relationships with people that you wouldn't normally form them with for the benefit of your kid.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because like I can't control who like Opal becomes besties with at school. Like I don't know who their parents are or whatever. And like how nerve wracking it is to like reach out in that way, because letting down your mask is ultimately taking a risk of like getting rejected, and being rejected is like, it feels like you aren't being seen. Like, and so, yeah,
totally.
I can relate to that in a way. Yeah.
Yeah. This is such a weird example, and I don't even know if it makes sense, but like, I feel that way sometimes within just being a photographer. Like when I get rejected from a client, like we went with someone cheaper, we went with someone for whatever reason, it feels so disheartening because you're like, you aren't seeing me.
Mm-hmm.
You don't value me. You are not understanding what I could do for you, whatever. And like when that's part of the game, it's just part of the industry, whatever photography you do, it's always feeling like not feeling seen.
Yes.
Like it happened to me this morning. I lost a potential job for Sunday because they went with someone less expensive. And I'm like, what the fuck? And it just feels like such rejection, and it just never, it's never different. But anyways, what a world, guys.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Something else that I wanted to ask, speaking about like being creatives and stuff, it's like, I don't know. Do you ever feel like within Black Sands, like curating all these beautiful pieces and clothing and all that, do you ever, because it's such a different, obviously, artistic medium than being a photographer, do you ever feel like you are in a creative rut with Black Sands? Because like, I don't know anything about buying vintage, selling vintage, curating that. Does that ever happen?
I don't know if I would use like the word creative rut, but I think that there are like periods in any business I've done where I have felt less inspired by just like a general feeling of like not feeling inspired. I just try to allow myself to have that time because I know that it's only a period. And then when I am feeling like creative or super lit up or just like idea gung ho, I like run full speed ahead and really lean into that because again, I don't know how long that will last or when that might come again. And I think, I don't know if I'm necessarily feeling like that I'm in that phase or that like uninspired phase right now, but I've given myself like the month of September to ground myself and just breathe for a second because I just moved out of the space on the 10th. So I wanted to like allow myself a moment to just feel that dust settle. And before I like force myself, so to speak, into like what I need to do next, I just was like, it's okay if September is like a slow, chill month. Like I just need that time for myself to regroup and reground myself in focus on the projects that I have been talking about for almost a year now and figure out how to get inspired to do them or give myself the time and the space to allow that creativity to come back in.
I love that.
That's really hard to do.
I need to remember to do that.
I know. That space.
I know. It really, really is. Or it's hard for me to even think to do that. Like, do I need to write a Post-it? I need to write a Post-it. Be like, Liz, calm down. Like,
well, I think we get so afraid that if we like disappear from the internet for a week, like we're just gonna like die and like no one's ever gonna remember us. But remember, you're living in like the vacuum of your business. And even if you didn't post for a month and then you posted again, someone might be like, oh, I didn't even notice you were gone. Like we're like, think about how you perceive other things, right? Like, it's not your time, like your timeline perception of things is so much different than someone else's perception of your timeline. Like, just think about, again, Liz, I know you said you've worked in the restaurant where you're like, oh my God, like I sat this table and their food's taking forever, and you're like, it's your first table and it's really slow and the food's not coming out, and you keep like looking at the people eating and they're just like enjoying their glass of wine and they're like completely oblivious, and you're like, oh my God, only 5 minutes have gone by. But because like your reality is like completely different than their reality. And I try to remind myself of this all the time, because I'm like, oh my God, I just emailed all these people and why haven't they emailed me back yet? And I'm like, it's been like 3 hours. And in my mind, I'm like, oh, it was like a week ago that I emailed them, and I do this constantly. And I'm trying to just be like, slow down. It's okay. Things will happen.
Yeah. That's so true. But also that's like the love hate with social media, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like this culture we have found ourselves in, where this incessant need to feel like you have to show up. Like,
yeah.
Because if you don't, your business is going to crumble. No one will remember you. No one will care. And this like obsession, I'm a lot less obsessive about it now than I was like, let's say 6 years ago. That Liz was wild with social media. I was like crazy. I remember you told me, hilarious, in my mentor session with Michelle, she said very gently, she like looked at her phone and brought up my profile and she goes, you have a lot of photos. And I was like, what do you mean? And she's like, you should go in and edit and like delete a lot of stuff. We couldn't archive back then. I don't think that was like a thing yet on Instagram. So if you got rid of a photo, you couldn't archive, you just delete it.
Yeah.
She's like, you have a lot of stuff here. And because I used to post like every day, sometimes twice a day. I was just like, I have to grow. I have to be present, whatever. Anyways, I haven't posted in like a week and a half at this point. So now I'm like much more lenient on it, but I think I have a hard time sometimes with like feeling like I have to be on Instagram. I have to post. I have to do all these things in order to be successful. And I want to rebel against it because I want to just do what I want to do.
Yep.
And there is a level of like, yes, you do need to show up for your business. Like you can't just completely disappear, I guess, unless you have a team doing it for you. But yeah, I think just remembering what's important.
Yeah. And people, even if they're aware of this or not, or if you believe in this or not, but like people they pick up on your energy subconsciously, whether or not they are aware of it. So if you're like, in a creative lull or going through something and you're like, I'm forcing myself to show up in X, Y, or Z way, like people are going to read through that, whether they know that they're doing that or not. And I really try to ascribe to like posting when it feels authentic to do so, or if I I tend to write my thoughts down when they come to me. Like if I all of a sudden like a thought just starts, I'm like immediately have to type it out. I never like reread or re-edit it. I'm like, that was my thought. That's how it's going out there. And it's only the times where I like try to force that or I post something and then I feel anxious immediately afterwards. And I was like, that was because that was coming from a place of inauthenticity, or I felt like I had to do something. So I really try to this is like so dumb and woohoo, but like I just try to post like when it feels authentic to do so. And because in my mind, I have kind of taken a step back from being super active on social media. And I feel like my engagement now is like a 10x because I post like one story a day, and I'm trying to be intentional about it at this moment. Cause I'm again, just like in a period of like, let's rest, regroup, like no pressure. And now I'm like, oh my God, like actually people are actually watching my story now, or, and so I'm just trying to, again, it's okay if you're not on there all the time, and to just really be intentional about it.
Yeah. I was listening to like a business podcast the other day, and they were saying like it is important to show up on social media, but it's even more important that when you do show up, it's like really intentional, thoughtful content rather than just how much you're posting.
Yeah.
Which I guess feels like common sense, but like, why is it so hard to remember that when you're like, oh my God, I haven't posted in 6 days. Oh my God, everything's crumbling. And it's like, no one cares. And probably no one's going to see it anyways, because this is how the algorithm works. But I've noticed too, like, I'm not in a season where I'm showing up the way I used to on Instagram or social media in general. Like, I'm not in a season where I'm like, look at all this new work all the time. And here's a 40 slide story on my day at the pumpkin patch. You know, like I used to make all these like really long, and each one had like, and I love doing that.
Yeah.
Like I do enjoy sharing my life in those ways, but I just am not, I don't have the capacity right now to show up like that anymore. And I know it'll come back at some point, but like the days that I force myself to do it are the days that no one even sees that content anyways. It's not being pushed out because it's not in, it's like people can sense that.
Yeah.
And like, I don't get engagement anyways. So what's the point? I just should only show up when it's like real, you know, and it feels real. So I totally agree with that. What do you think, Linz? I mean, you're so good at being consistent.
Well, I mean, I think it's because I just have a system of it, but like it doesn't necessarily always feel, I guess, I mean, it is authentic, but I'm not putting myself out there as much as I was. It's more just about the work.
Right.
Which I think has actually taken some pressure off of it. But something that I've been thinking about a bit is my husband and I went to see Ira Glass. And I don't know, Michelle, if you know who he is, but he's like the OG podcaster. Like he's the host of This American Life. He's like on NPR all the time. Like, yeah. And he spoke recently and he just kind of had this moment on stage where he said, can we just all agree that social media is boring? That like all of it is just boring, because he was talking about how what the structure is and how you tell an interesting story. And you can't do that in the way that Instagram or TikTok or whatever like makes us do it, which is in these a minute or less chunks. And when I analyze the reels that we make for the podcast, usually they're around 30 seconds, but people's engagement drops off at like 8 seconds usually, or even less than that. You can't tell a story in 8 seconds. And so we're all just, it's got to be so snappy, and it's just not, I mean, this is such a cliche thing, but like, it's just, Instagram does not cater to creatives anymore. It caters to short attention spans. Yeah.
Good
so
times. I'm glad our brain chemistry is just
it's just
changing
fucked.
for the better.
Like, it's so hard to show up in an authentic way because the system is not built for that.
Yeah. No, I mean, we could probably do a whole other episode on talking about this, but
this is a slippery slope, guys.
Yeah.
I think the thing to remember is, you know, Instagram is just a platform, and it should not be like somebody's sole way to reach their audience. Like I have a photography Instagram that I've had for years, and I have terrible engagement on it, and I'm not really consistent about posting it, but I also like, that's not really how I reach my clients. Sure, I've gotten some new clients on there, and it's like I'm kind of refreshing it, but it is not how I built my business. And it isn't like, you know, numbers aren't really indicative of success. But I will say, like for Black Sands, now that again, I'm online solely, I definitely, like, if I'm active that day, I will maybe have a sale or more sales in the days that I'm not active. So it is important to stay front of mind. But again, it's like I started Black Sands because I felt so stifled in my photography business to actually authentically show up as myself online. And Black Sands was like my playful place to just be like, this is me. This is what I'm going through. I'm sad today, or I'm doing this and this is cute. And it has always like been the basis of that business. And it's still a place where I can post something and I'm like, I'm sad today and here's why. And people like really relate to that, but it's like how I process things. So it's not like I'm doing it, performatively. Like it's like, this is just honestly like who I am. And if I made one person feel less alone, or I helped like one person like think about something in a new way, then that really like lights me up, and it makes me feel like my pain was important because it helped somebody, like even if it's just one person. And I think like going back to the loneliness thing, that is like a way that I process loneliness, is by just unapologetically sharing it with the world, whether you're listening or not. But I love to write and express myself, and if it helps one person, then goal achieved.
I love that. Well, let's just take business out of the equation for a second, because for me, at least, Michelle, since we live in a world where we follow each other on this thing called Instagram, so much of like what I know is like what's going on in your business and like what's going on with Black Sands and photography and things. But like, Michelle, what do you do with your days? Like when you're not running an empire, like what are you doing? Like who is Michelle?
Oh, this is a great question. And literally I just like had a conversation with somebody and he was like, so what are your hobbies? And I was like, oh, I don't know if I have those. Like,
well, because business is part of that.
When you're not working. I'm like, work?
Mm-hmm.
If that's not accurate of the entrepreneurial life, yeah.
I know. It really sums it up.
I think I've built a life where I get to do my hobbies and they are my job and they are like so intertwined. But as my best friend pointed out to me, she's like, no, you have hobbies. Like I love to travel. I love writing. I love cooking. If going out to eat was a hobby, that would definitely be one of them.
If I could just have like all the money in the world, I'd be so well fed.
Yeah.
I would just go to a restaurant like every single day, maybe multiple times.
Yeah. I mean, that's a hard question.
I think
I was like, maybe I need hobbies before I start like dating again.
My girlfriend says that to me too. She's single and she's like, I told her that this is not real. But like, she's like, I don't feel like I'm that interesting of a person because I don't have like a ton of hobbies, and like dating's going to be really hard. Like, what do I tell people on these dates that I do?
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, you don't have to be the most interesting person in the world to be loved or be interesting to someone. We don't need 45 hobbies, but it is so interesting to know like what people do in this entrepreneurial world that we live in, what we're doing outside of that. Cause it's like, we really do have to carve that time out. Because otherwise, and I say this in a good way, it does run our lives. Like our businesses are our life. And so it's like, well, what are we doing outside of this,
And to Michelle's point of earlier in the episode where, you were like identified as a photographer, identified about what you do, like getting asked that question of what are your hobbies, you're almost forced to then like identify yourself in a way, So it's like, oh, I like to write. Or like, for me, it's like, I love to garden, but this year I've been like pretty lax on gardening. Like I haven't done a ton. So am I even a gardener?
Yes,
right.
You are. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank
you.
Yes. Anyway, that was random thought.
I like what you just said though, Lindsay, because I I enjoy writing. Like it is again, I would love to write a book someday. I'm throwing that out in the world.
Okay.
And I love writing. It's probably the only thing that I do that does not have a monetary gain or aspect to it right now. But I feel like I always find ways to monetize the things that I enjoy doing. But I haven't been writing as much lately, but I can still be a writer. Like you can still identify as something that even if you do it once in a while because you really, really love it, and that like you're allowed to do that. You're allowed to identify with whatever aspect of creativity or your personality that speaks to you, even if you don't do it, whatever. I'm like really passionate about Amaro. Like I love like just like learning the culture of that spirit specifically. And like, there's a lot of things that I really enjoy learning about, that I don't necessarily like actively participate in, but they are like interests of mine. But yeah, if I have free time, I'm probably going to like go grab dinner with my girlfriend, or like if I had a day off, I would love to just go down to Portland for the day. I love to just take little trips and travel and explore and just observe the world. If that's a hobby.
Oh, it is a hobby, and I can't wait to do that again. Like, it's all I want, you guys. I love my child, but I can't wait to just like, God, like, yeah, like those day trips, just like make a decision and then you open the door and then you go. Like,
you can still
really
do that. You just have
that.
to carefully carve that time out for yourself, right?
I know. Yes. It's just everything is just so much more like intentional now. Like it has to be so much. It's just not a spontaneous time in life right now, which is fine. But yeah, I love all of that. I feel like there's an overarching theme to this whole episode, which is like identity. And I don't know, like if you like, okay, here's my example. Have you ever seen Sister Act 2?
I don't think so, actually. I know there's like so many references to that in life, but
ladies, listen to me. You need to watch Sister Act 2. It's on Disney Channel Plus. Okay. Everyone listening, go watch this movie. It's perfect. Lauryn Hill is starring. Right. Exactly. Lauryn Hill is leading with Whoopi Goldberg, and it's like the best movie ever. But anyways, she wants to sing. Like she's this amazing singer and she wants to sing, but she doesn't, like they're not in a neighborhood full of like opportunities, you know, and her mom doesn't support this life of her trying to be a professional singer. And so she's just kind of like, I don't know what I'm thinking. So she like backs out of being in this school choir, and Whoopi Goldberg like gets to her and she like gives her this book to read. It's like supposed to really inspire her and stuff to go after it. But she goes, it's like a famous line where she says, if the first thing you do when you wake up in the morning is think about singing, you're a singer. And if it's the last thing you're thinking about at the end of the night is singing, then you are a singer. And sometimes I channel Whoopi when I'm having an identity crisis, because it's like I'm not able to, you know, do as many personal shoots right now like I used to. I'm not able to like be immersed in photography. Like obviously it's the way I make my living, but I'm not immersed in it in the way that I used to be pre-baby. And sometimes I have, you know, like this identity crisis about it. And I'm like, well, am I even like really a photographer? And like, if whatever, like all these questions, like, but it is all I think about. It's like, all I think about is like photography and shoots and concepts and dressing up and all these things. And it's like, no, I will always identify as a photographer no matter what is going on or as a creative and whatever. And I don't really need to always question it. And I feel like it's kind of like an overarching thing we've been talking about this whole episode.
But think about like how amazing it is that you are a photographer and also a mom and also a host of a podcast. Like I look up to you and what you guys are doing here, and you should be really proud of this because you're creating this space where you get to just go like beyond the one thing that you're already doing, and like connecting with people and sharing stories and talking about life. And that's really, really cool.
Michelle, I'm going to cry. It's my turn.
Like, I think you're discrediting and forgetting like what we're even doing here right now. Like,
that's so beautiful. Thank you for saying that. Cause, oh, that's so nice. I mean, sometimes Lindsay and I are like, hello, is anyone listening? Like, we're just sitting here talking to ourselves. But yeah, thank you. It's been a fun journey, but to what you're saying, yeah, like I think we just all need to remember all the things we're doing and just, I don't know, like, and I have sometimes a harder, Lindsay, do you ever feel this way? Like sometimes I just forget to enjoy the journey. I am just so focused on like getting there. And I'm like, what is happening? Like, no.
Yeah. Sometimes I just have these moments where I'm like, I've just been go, go, go. And I'm like, I haven't enjoyed my life in a while. Like,
yeah.
And then I, of course, in classic Lindsay fashion, I like get guilty about that. And I'm just like, okay, I'm like, I need to slow down.
We're spiraling.
Slow down. We're spiraling. We need to chill. But yeah, I think a cool thing about being a mom of a 3.5-year-old is like, just this morning, she like, I was like, and I had a doctor's appointment early on. And so I was like rushing to like get dressed and everything and get her ready for school. And she just like walked to the back door and she was like, Mama, look it, the clouds are orange. And I was just like,
oh, Opal.
Oh,
yeah.
And I
thanks
went
for
and
reminding.
at first, my immediate reaction was like, I have 5 minutes to get out of the house right now. And I was like, no. And I went and I sat with her and we like talked about the clouds and yeah.
That's so cute.
I hope everyone who listens to this episode is in tears and journaling and scheduling therapy appointments.
Everybody needs therapy, no matter how well adjusted you think you are.
Yeah, it's so good.
Well, Michelle, thank you so much for taking so much time with us and like being really vulnerable and like just being super open about all this because yeah, as we have discussed, it can be a lonely world to run a business and be a creative. And this is the secret life really of like all of that. So I hope that people get a lot out of it.
Thank you. I'm very honored to be here. And I feel like this was just a little goal that I had for this year. And thank you for letting me convince you to be here.
Oh my gosh. We're so honored you wanted to. No, we were like, okay, yep, putting in the roster. Perfect. Thank you so much for wanting to be here because yeah, we are so happy to have someone like you on the podcast.
Thank you.
Okay. So, I will be stalking you soon and asking you to hang out and there's no pressure.
I'm at Red Arrow. I've been at Red Arrow like every day this week. Do you know they have sourdough waffles right now?
Oh my God. Their food is so good. Lindsay, next time you're in town, we'll go to Red Arrow. It's a delight. The only thing is that I can't really work there very long because they don't have outlets.
There's no plugs.
There's no plugs.
Yep.
So I'm there for like an hour and then I'm like, well, I gotta go now.
Yeah.
So, but it is a great little spot when I'm walking Oliver and stuff. I'm like, let's go get an $11 coffee and just enjoy our life, you know?
Michelle, where can people find you?
So Black Sands is, I guess, like my Instagram that I spend the most time on, which it's Black Sands with no C in the black. It's BLAKSANDS. And then my photography account is More Photo. And, you know, I have websites for both of those things. If you go to my Black Sands website, it's just blacksands.com and subscribe to my mailing list. I have a lot of events and pop-ups coming up this fall, October through December. If you want to shop some curated vintage in real life, I do have a rack at September in Ballard. I have a really awesome
Oh, nice.
collaboration with them. So I have a rack of vintage that I keep refreshed every week. So if you want to shop in person 7 days a week, that's a spot to find me. And their store is super cute.
Okay, well, virtual hug to all. And this has been so fun. You're the best, Michelle.
Thank you.
Thank you again.
Thank you
I'm
so much for
excited.
coming on. Yeah.
Yes, and we'll put all of your info and like where people can find you too in the show notes.
Okay.
Okay.
Yay.
Cool.
Yay. Okay, thanks, Michelle. Bye.
That's a wrap. Thank you, everybody, for listening.
You can find the show notes at thesecretlifeofpod.com/episodes.
We would love for you to follow us on Instagram at The Secret Life of Pod, where we share lots of updates and personal musings.
Please subscribe, rate, and review. We read all of your feedback and it helps us grow.
If you have comments or ideas for future episodes, you can email us at hello@thesecretlifeofpod.com.
Okay, bye.
Bye.